Kicking off the list at number 10, Wasp. Sometimes size matters. I mean, the Incredible Hulk can eat a car and then squish another car and toss it across San Francisco. That's awesome. But sometimes size doesn't necessarily matter. Janet Van Dyne may be small, but just like Ant-Man, she packs a mean punch. She made her first debut back in Tales to Astonish issue 44, and in the early 60s, she became a founding member of the Avengers, after her soon-to-be husband, Hank Pym, genetically altered her and gave her the ability to shrink down using Pym particles. She was also given biosynthetic wings implanted in her back to help her fly around while she fires bioelectric energy stings at bad guys. Donning the nickname the Wasp, she became Ant-Man's partner, and fans are excited that the release date being announced last week, we now get Ant-Man's third movie, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, and it hits theaters February 2022. So in the MCU, Janet is finally an Avenger post-Endgame, and in Avengers issue 1, well, she was already on the roster. Number 9, Black Knight. Dane Whitman made his comic book debut in Avengers issue 48. He inherited his uncle Garrett's castle and had no idea that his uncle was the villain, the Black Knight. He found the Ebony Blade and passed its test, becoming the new Black Knight. He then decided to join the Masters of Evil like his uncle did, but he was going in undercover. He was on the good side, so he wanted to help the Avengers, but they still needed more. They didn't trust him quite enough yet. In Avengers issue 71, funny enough, titled Endgame, Dane joins the Avengers. Well, kind of. Like I said, they didn't trust him so much until he helped fight Kang the Conqueror, and then they were like, okay, he's cool, come on aboard. He's an excellent swordsmith, so much so that he's beaten the swordsmith in combat. And that sword that he uses as well grants him immunity to magical powers. Plus the dude rides a winged horse, an underrated Avenger for sure. And before we continue on with this list, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up down below, that would be super helpful. It helps us a lot, especially while we're working from home. You guys are the best. Thank you so much. Now let's bounce right back into this list. Number 8, Avenger X. Cressida made her debut in Avengers Volume 7, Issue 2. When the Avengers got help from the X-Men to track down the Stranger, Professor X helped by using Cerebro to direct them to northern Thailand, where they rescued a local woman named Cressida from the cosmic being. Now, she had this ability that could amplify the Avengers. They all got super jacked up, and even Cap said that he felt stronger. He felt like he could take on a full army. He's jumping higher, throwing 10 times harder. It's wild. When Scarlet Witch asked how she did that, she says she doesn't really know, but she feels sorry doing it. But the downside of her powers were kept hush-hush from Wanda. See, in order to empower them, she had to drain the life of everybody else in the village. And in the next issue, she was deemed an Avenger. She was given the tour, the whole thing. Welcome aboard. But meanwhile, while this is going on, at Sunshine Nursing Home, the same thing was happening to those who got the life drained from the village. Powerful team member, but maybe a little bit too dark. Number 7, Squirrel Girl. On to something a little bit more bright, let's go on to Doreen Green. She made her comic book debut in Marvel Superheroes Volume 2, Issue 8, back in the early 90s. She was born with these fantastic squirrel-like abilities, tail included. She learned she could communicate with squirrels at just age 10. Now, this sounds like a fairy tale so far, but don't let the tail fool you. She packs an incredible punch. For example, in an early comic, she took on Dr. Doom. In Marvel Superheroes Issue 8, she bumps into Stark, gives him a run for his money in order to prove how powerful she is, and then she shows Tony her power. She jumps, she hops, she climbs all around. It's pretty impressive. Squirrels start coming in from everywhere, and then all of a sudden they're commanded to jump onto Tony. And then Dr. Doom came and interrupted the whole thing. He jammed Stark's electronics, and in order to save Tony, she sent that horde of squirrels onto the Doom ship. It was amazing. And then voila, Stark is free thanks to the insane squirrel posse. Then the squirrels get down to Doom, and then he leaves. He taps out. He's like, I don't want anything to do with this. This is way too much for me. Guy straight up ran away. Doreen later joined the US Avengers on their 2017 run. Number 6, Sandman. Believe it or not, Sandman was once an Avenger. William Baker made his comic book debut in 1963 with The Amazing Spider-Man issue 4. And yeah, sure, most of the time the Sandman is considered a villain, but that's why we have to mention this small change of heart, because even bad guys, it's possible to change. It happens. He bumped into the Thing, a similar looking guy, you know, being big and beige and big and all. So they had a little chat about life and how to use your abilities maybe for the greater good. So we started to help Spider-Man a bit here and there, and then in Avengers issue 329, Captain America announced a new Avengers team, and on that roster was Sandman. He was one of the 7 reserve members. He of course didn't last long because, well, he was a reserve member for one, and coming from the villain side already, I'm sure he wasn't too committed. How great would that have been if the good guys had a sand dude? Wouldn't that be great? We could use the sand guy. Number 5, triathlon slash 3D man. Okay, 3D man slash triathlon, aka Delroy Garrett Jr. He joined the team in Avengers Volume 3, Issue 27. He showed up and just whooped everybody's ass. It was great. The team basically had to hire him on the spot. They had no choice. But before this, he grew up running, hence his name Triathlon. He competed in the Olympic Games and he was crushing it. That was until he tested positive for steroids. Then he got his 3 medals taken away from him. So he turned to religion, to the triune understanding, and the group's founder, Jonathan Tremont, had found a fragment of a mysterious object and used it to give Garrett the powers of 3D man, the 3D man himself. Look out. I would see a 3D man movie in 3D. God, what a ride that would be. You just don't put on the glasses and you don't see half the movie. You're like, oh, I get it. It's cool. It's cool. Number 4, US agent. Okay, spoilers coming in hot for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If you haven't watched it yet, pause this video, watch the entire series, and then come back and click play. It's easy. John Walker is known for being the hothead that replaces Captain America in the show and in the comics. He went as far as injecting super soldier serum into his own body, but he didn't become Steve Rogers. Instead, he killed a guy with the Captain America shield. It's kind of brutal. And by the time the show ends, the shield is back in the hands of Captain America, Sam Wilson, and Walker becomes US agent, officially. The suit's black, so it's, official and all. And in the comics, he eventually joined the ranks of the West Coast Avengers, and it feels like this is where the Avengers are going in the MCU currently. Because in the comics, when Hawkeye moved to the West Coast and set up an Avengers team there, the government wanted to put somebody official, kind of out of the superhero loop, in there just to make sure things are going smoothly. Now at this time, the Vision was also a bit of a problem, so that move made sense. So they sent in US agent. Now with Vision being white in the MCU, I feel like they're kind of heading there. This is getting good. It's getting tricky. Number 3, Hawkeye. I have to mention Hawkeye because he's one of the 1960s Avenger recruits, and he's one of the big 6 in the MCU, and I feel like he doesn't get enough credit on screen still. Like in the comics, he becomes Goliath. It's epic. When the West Coast Avengers were assembled, Hawkeye was the leader of the team, like I said. But for a little bit, that was until they thought the US agent would be a better replacement for leadership. So he ended up coming in and then taking over as the new leader. So things get a little wonky. So Hawkeye thought, no sweat. I'll get some Pym particles and we'll see who the biggest guy is after all. And then he became this. Number 2, the Sentry. He made his first appearance in Sentry issue 1. Meet Robert Reynolds. He was a struggling addict who made his way into a laboratory and discovered something called the Golden Sentry Serum. So he consumed it, and then he got the surprise of a lifetime when he was given the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns. So back in 1947, Project Sentry was put together by the remnants of the US Operation Rebirth and Canada's Department K. They joined forces and they wanted to recreate the super soldier serum, but they magnified its effects 100,000 times. That plus a cool outfit in the mix, and now we have a new superhero. So after this, Robert fought alongside the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and of course, the New Avengers. He's a really powerful guy. He once became a Horseman of Apocalypse. He was the Horseman Death. And then he ended up going crazy because he thought he was the heir of Apocalypse. It was a whole thing. It was crazy. And finally, number 1, Hercules. Of course, we can't forget the son of Zeus. Come on, the king of the Olympian gods, another 60s recruit, Hercules. He made his first Silver Age appearance in Journey into Mystery Annual Issue 1 in 1965, and in Avengers Issue 45, he and the rest of the team went against the Super Adaptoid. And right after the dust had settled, Hercules was standing with the team, expressing how bright the sun doth shines. Somebody even put his name on a sign. That's how you know it's official. As soon as a 19-year-old starts painting your name on it like a Katy Perry concert, bam, you made it. So with Russell Crowe reportedly cast as Zeus in the next Thor installment, we may be closer to Hercules than we think. Number 10, Mantis. A new addition to the Guardians team, Mantis went from being Ego's roommate in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 to becoming an Avenger, even holding Thanos down while the rest of the team tried to take the gauntlet off. Now in the comics, Mantis had to endure quite a bit before becoming an Avenger. She made her first appearance in Avengers issue 112, The Lion God Lives. Mantis was trained as a child by alien priests, section of the Kree, who thought that she was destined to be the celestial Madonna. She was killing it in martial arts, hence the nickname Mantis. Now her real name is Brant, but Mantis sounds much more fun. No offense to all the Brants out there. Those priests enhanced her mind, giving her telepathic abilities, and on her 18th birthday, she was given the gift of a lifetime, when her mind was wiped and she was instead given false memories of her childhood as an orphan in Vietnam, to experience a normal life. Because that's part of the celestial Madonna route. Nothing builds that Madonna power more than some time in Vietnam. Right? And in doing so, Mantis learned to hold it down on her own quite easily. Number 9, Dr. Druid. Anthony Ludgate entered Marvel Comics in Weird Wonder Tales issue 19. He's a bit of a smarty pants, some would say. I mean, he got a degree in psychology from Harvard and then became a psychiatrist. But that wasn't enough for Anthony. He wanted to study the ancient powers of his ancestral druids. So he was studying the occult on his off time. He finally met the ancient one who passed down a lot of tricks, and Anthony left and became Dr. Druid, assisting monster hunters, including Makari, when they went against deviants. So this guy goes back quite far. He's also a little more dramatic than strange, some would say. In Avengers issue 294, he manipulated Captain America's mind so that he would be the replacement chairman. And this was right after Captain Marvel was injured. What a snake. And before we continue on with this list of strongest Avengers you wouldn't expect, part 2, if you want to go ahead and give us a thumbs up, that would be so helpful for our channel. It really helps us out a lot, especially while we're working from home. And if you haven't as well, hit that subscribe button maybe if you feel like it. I don't know, if you feel like it. Let's get back into this list. Number 8, Firestar. Angelica Jones made her comic book debut in Uncanny X-Men 193. She was born with, well, as you would guess by her name, the ability to generate great heat. Cerebro found her, but the Hellfire Club got to her moments before. She was learning a lot under the White Queen's guidance, honestly, unaware of the cruel nature of the club, of course. See, Frost actually gave her the nickname Firestar. So then Firestar joined as a reserve member in Avengers Volume 3, Issue 4. Yeah, so Hawkeye demanded that one of the 2 new members that they're recruiting has to be Firestar. He announced it to the world prematurely. He was that confident. The other members are like, whoa, let's hold on a second here, because that spot that we had open was actually for you, Hawkeye. But they settled on reserve member. That's fine, that's good enough. Now cut to issue 7, the former X-Men member became a full Avengers member. Firestar was also amongst the lucky 198 mutants to have kept their abilities after the Scarlet Witch decimated the mutant population. Number 7, Quasar. This dude was only an Avenger for 4 years in the comics, but he's funky enough to mention. I feel like we don't talk about Quasar enough. Robert Frank Sr. made his first appearance in USA Comics 1, and after a run-in with a cobra, he was bitten and his father had to use mongoose blood to try and save him the old-fashioned way, where he sucks the poison out. Some wives' tale, and it surely worked, but his father had a heart attack during this do-it-yourself transfusion and bit the bullet. Robert, on the other hand, was blessed with super speed after this. And then he became the Quasar. Great name, great name. He joined the Avengers in issue 173 back in 1978, but he met his fate and Vision in the Scarlet Witch issue 2 in 1982. Number 6, Demolition Man. Dennis Murphy, born in Detroit, Michigan. He looked up to superheroes quite a bit, as do most of us. He was actually great at football, but he wasn't great enough to be recruited professionally. Sad times. But then that's when the power broker comes in to strike up a bargain. Super strength ought to help you with those home games, right, Dennis? Let's do it. Well, what happened was he got so strong that if he did decide to play football with these humans, he would probably break through them. His name is Demolition Man. Nobody would expect this guy to be an Avenger because he wasn't even the best football player. That's like what Peter Parker says. He's like, I couldn't do stuff then, so I can't do stuff now. You know? He joined the Avengers in Captain America issue 349. He helped Battlestar and US Agent free Captain America, and when US Agent and Flag Smasher started to get a little distracted, D-Man himself finished the mission properly. Number 5, Lightning. Living Lightning, here we go. It's hard to imagine that a man made of lightning would ever not get the spotlight, but that's what happens when you share the pages with this team. Lightning, aka Miguel Santos, first came into comics as a villain, actually, but he joined the West Coast Avengers in issue 74. Now, his father, cut to way before, his father was part of this group called the Legion of Living Lightning, or LOL, as some would say. And when they tried to gain control of the Hulk, which is a terrible idea, his father was killed in action. Again, terrible idea, don't fight the Hulk. So Miguel wanted to learn more of his father in the Legion, so he broke into the Legion's headquarters, and while he was snooping around, one of the machines turned on, and he turned into a living energy. Now, he almost joined the Great Lakes Avengers at one point, but only because he thought GLA meant Gay Lesbian Alliance. I don't think Great Lakes are as exciting, but you never know. We have one over here, it's Lake Ontario. It's way too cold and smelly. No. I would much rather Gay Lesbian Alliances. The team had the worst luck when it came to recruits. Let's just say that. Number 4, Stingray. Walter Newell made his comic book debut in Tales to Astonish issue 95. Now his life began as an oceanographer and an engineer, and once he created a suit built for deep sea exploration, a cool nickname was bound to come afterwards. Stingray, there it is, that's a cool nickname. He was ordered to bring in Namor to investigate the disappearance of water from our oceans. He ended up working with Namor numerous times, Water Bros for life. And then he joined the team as a reserve member in the Avengers issue 319. Funny enough, in the Armor Wars storyline, Iron Man wanted to recover all these suits that had Stark tech in it. So he comes in, knocks out Stingray, and then after attaching the Negator pack, nothing happened. So the suit was indeed not stolen. You know, it's always nice when you knock someone out for no reason. I'd love to see him make an appearance in the Armor Wars Disney show, but I think we need a lot of other stuff first before we even look at Stingray. Although he is cool. Number 3, Jack of Hearts. Jonathan Hart, son of Philip Hart, a brilliant scientist who developed a liquid called Zero Fluid, and his mother was actually part of the Contraxian race. Now, the alien woman was also a scientist sent to discover this energy source to help their dying Contraxian son. Now, the alien lady heard about Philip Hart's experiments, so they met, got married, and then out came Jack. And then later on, when Jack was a teenager, his father had completed the Zero Fluid, but was sadly killed by the agents of a criminal corporation who wanted the fluid for themselves to market it. Classic bad guy stuff. Give us your fluids, let's fight. So when Jack hid in his father's lab, he was covered in said Zero Fluid, and then he started to glow and change and become more powerful, becoming the Jack of Hearts. Energy was just oozing out of his body. He handled his father's killers easily after that. He then joined the Avengers in Volume 3, Issue 43. Number 2, not one, but 2 guns. He's got 2 guns, the 2-gun kid. Let's talk about him. Of course, we can't forget this rootin' tootin' Avenger. Look out, gang, here he comes. Matt Hawk joined the team in Avengers 142. This guy's fun. Now, the cover alone, let's talk about this. The Avengers versus the wild Western heroes of all. Let's go. I'm gonna read this right now. He was a Harvard-educated Boston lawyer who settled in 1870s Tombstone, Texas, after the Civil War. Like the Civil War, not Civil War, like the Civil War. You get it? I don't really have to pitch what his life was pre-Avengers. I mean, there's horses, there's shooting, there's lots of nice boots. One day he saved the life of this elderly man. He was getting picked on by a rootin' tootin' gang. But this man just happened to be legendary gunslinger Ben Dancer. It's Ben Dancer. So Ben is exactly what you'd imagine in your head. I read all of his lines in Sam Elliott's voice because, well, of course I did. Look at him. So he, of course, trained Matt, and then when the Avengers fought Kang back in that era, so once the dust had settled, literally, the dust had settled, the 2-gun kid came back to the modern era with the team. And Hawkeye had a pretty good time as well. This is when he started to dig the West Coast life. He wanted to leave the Avengers because being a bow and arrow man made more sense to be out there than Manhattan. I have to agree. And finally, number 1, we can't forget about him, the Forgotten One. Gilgamesh made his first appearance in Eternals issue 13. He was born before the Ice Age, and in 3000 BC, the Eternal became Gilgamesh, king of Uruk in Sumeria. In ancient times, he would wander the earth battling tyrants and taking down beasts. He would fight alongside Hercules, and he even took down the demon dragon Zeus. He fought for the Roman Empire as a centurion, just taking out tribes left and right, and then he joined the Avengers in issue 300. And currently, he works alongside Hercules and the gods of war. Now, I feel like we're gonna see this guy soon in the MCU. I mean, the Eternals movie, Thor, Love and Thunder, bringing in some gods. The Forgotten One, no more, I have a feeling.
Number 10, Quasar. Wendell Vaughn was once a run-of-the-mill SHIELD agent who was placed in charge of guarding the quantum bands until one fateful day that changed his life forever. One day, AIM androids were sent to steal the bands, and William Wesley had unfortunately passed away just an hour before, so in order to protect them, Wendell put them on himself, and thanks to his lack of killer instincts, he was able to not only control the power of the bands, but also defeat the AIM androids. Now, if you're not familiar with the power of the quantum bands, let me give you a bit of a rundown. The quantum bands draw quantum energy from the universe, and specifically it taps into the quantum zone. With this, Quasar is capable of controlling all forms of energy. Now, similar to DC's Green Lantern, he can also use energy to create force fields, armor, and weapons, as well as fly, teleport into the quantum zone, and communicate via radio waves. As a longtime fan of the Avengers, Quasar was honored when Captain America personally invited him to join the team, and as a part of the team, he would go on to fight with them in the Kree/Shi'ar war. Unfortunately, Quasar's duties as the protector of the universe would limit his involvement thereafter, though. Check him out in his first appearance as Marvel Boy in 1978's Captain America number 217. Number 9, Mockingbird. Born and raised in San Diego, Barbara Bobby Morse was first introduced as a highly trained SHIELD agent and sidekick of Quasar. However, it wasn't until much later in the Marvel team-up series that Morse began using the Mockingbird alias. Now, she doesn't actually possess any superpowers, however, thanks to being injected by a formula, she was bestowed super strength, enhanced agility, and a regenerative healing factor. Couple all that with her extensive training in both hand-to-hand combat and weaponry, and that is a recipe for a valuable member of the Avengers. Now, after eloping with Hawkeye, the two were notified of the formation of the West Coast Avengers, and and several Avengers including Mockingbird herself left to join the new squad, and her and Hawkeye served as this cute little motivating force for the team. Skip ahead a bit and we see Hawkeye and Mockingbird train the new Great Lakes Avengers, and then during the wake of the Avengers receiving a United Nations charter, both active teams were actually revamped, and Bobby received only one vote to become an active member of the Great Lakes Avengers and ended up going back to the West Coast Avengers. Obviously there's a whole lot more to her story, so feel free to check it out for yourself, starting with her first appearance as Mockingbird in 1980's Marvel team-up number 95. Number 8. Spectrum. Born and raised in New Orleans, Monica Rambeau gained her powers one day while working for the New Orleans Harbor Police when she was exposed and bombarded by extra-dimensional energy. Now classified as an alpha-level threat, she uses her newfound energy form to create energy blasts, alter her appearance, fly, and just a whole lot more. Given the name Captain Marvel by the media, she became friends with many superpowered folks early on and actually served as an Avenger for a period of time, becoming its leader at one point. However, she was forced to step down from the group after way too many injuries. Out of respect for Genus Vel, the son of the original Captain Marvel, she changed her name to Photon so that he could take up the mantle and carry on his father's legacy. Fast forward a little bit past her time with the Mighty Avengers, we see Monica, now known as Spectrum, join the newly formed Ultimates. However, after the second superhuman civil war, the team was disbanded by the government because of the way they dealt with conflict. They did later reassemble to investigate Eternity at the request of Galactus, and eventually the team was combined into Alpha Flight, and they are working to keep people safe to this very day. Now if you want to know more about Monica's origin story, check her out in her first appearance in 1982's Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 16. Number 7. Wonder Man. One of the Avengers' more troubled team members, the ionic energy-powered superhero Simon Williams, who has a long history with the Avengers that goes all the way back to his debut. Now Simon inherited his father's company Williams Innovations and ended up running it straight into the ground with the help of competition from Stark Industries. He was then later arrested for embezzling funds from the company, giving him a bitter hatred for Iron Man that was then leveraged by the supervillain Baron Zemo as a plot against the Avengers. After being given powers by Zemo, however, Simon betrays him and chooses to fight alongside the team he once fought against. The exact nature of his powers isn't always clear, but regardless, this energy gives his body a massive power up beyond the capabilities of normal humans, one of the powers being of course super strength. Wonder Man's strength is said to be on par with Thor and even possibly Sentry, as one time he literally knocked out Thor with just one punch, and this is a result of the experiments by Zemo. Wonder Man is also imbued with ionic energy, giving him super stamina, speed, agility, and then flight and reflexes, as well as making him pretty much indestructible. Wonder Man can also absorb various forms of energy including antimatter, is able to project powerful energy blasts at will, and can even exist as pure energy if he wants to. Perhaps the biggest quirk of his abilities, however, is that he doesn't actually require any food, water, or even oxygen to survive, all thanks to his vast reserves of energy. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1964's Avengers number 9. Number 6. Crystal. The first Inhuman to appear on this list today, Crystal is a part of the royal family of Attilan and was subjected to the Terrigen Mist when she was very young, which gave her some pretty cool mental powers. Put simply, she's just basically the Avatar. She has control over the 4 elements, fire, water, earth, and air, which is done through psionic interactions with the substance on an atomic level. However, these 4 elements aren't where her control ends, because she also is capable of electrokinesis, magnetokinesis, thermokinesis, and cryokinesis. During her tenure with the Avengers taking place during the Operation Galactic Storm, she developed an attraction with teammate Dane Whitman, the Black Knight. This relationship was a bit complicated as Pietro was trying to fix their marriage, and the available and aggressive Cersei pursuing Dane at the time as well. Crystal recommitted to Pietro when he returned to the Avengers, and Dane and Cersei were soon transported to another universe, ending their thoughts of an affair completely. Crystal was among the Avengers who seemingly sacrificed themselves to end the menace called Onslaught. Actually transported to a different reality created by Franklin Richards, Crystal was restored when the heroes returned. When the heroes who were believed to be dead returned to Earth, Crystal and Quicksilver were quickly reunited, and both helped the Avengers reassemble. Crystal, however, returned to Attilan where she remained beside the royal family, raising Luna. Check out her story for yourself, starting with 1965's Fantastic Four, number 45. Number 5. Miss America. Raised in a dimension outside of time and space known as the Utopian Parallel, America Chavez is one of Marvel's newer teen heroes, and she is a powerhouse to say the least. She's been a member of multiple super teams, including the Young Avengers, A-Force, the West Coast Avengers, and the Ultimates, and belongs to the younger generation of heroes who will potentially be the stars of Marvel stories in the future. Chavez gained her powers as a young girl from a magical entity that resided where she lived, and these powers are superhuman strength and speed, star portal creation which allows her to travel the multiverse, and of course, hypercosmic awareness alongside a number of other powers and abilities. When her dimension was threatened by black holes, her mothers sacrificed themselves to save it, and Chavez ran away from home to travel across dimensions. This began her journey both literally and emotionally from girl to superhero. Since her introduction, America has taken part in many huge plot points, one of the biggest being her role in Civil War II. Now I won't spoil too much of it for you because it absolutely deserves a read, but let's just say she was smart enough to outsmart Captain Marvel and Spectrum. Appearing for the first time in 2011's Avengers #1, why not check her out for yourself? Number 4. Captain Universe. Tamara DeVoe, aka Captain Universe, was once a woman who suffered from some pretty bad amnesia after a car crash. Although that's not the greatest outcome, she was also imbued with the power of the Enigma Force in the aftermath, so I guess that's somewhat of a bright side. Now what's the Enigma Force? Well, it is a mystical energy that passes through the microverse in order to protect and preserve the microverse. The wielders of this force are imbued with the Unipower, a facet of the Enigma Force that gives the wielder some pretty sweet powers. In Tamara's case, she was given the ability to manipulate matter and energy, and can also use Univision, which allows her to sense things on a subatomic level or at great distances, or she can use it to literally force someone to tell the truth. Her first mission with the Avengers was actually on Mars to stop the powerful beings Ex Nihilo, Abyss, and Aleph from terraforming the Earth in their image. When Tamara approached them, both Nihilo and Abyss recognized her as their literal goddess and the physical manifestation of the universe itself, so they immediately submitted and just agreed to her terms. However, Aleph did not and just straight up attacked her. Captain Universe easily burned the robot to ashes with a single touch, and the Avengers returned to Earth after a very easy job well done. That wasn't her only mission with the team though, but I will let you check that one out for yourself. Give her story a read starting with 2013's Avengers Volume 5, Number 1. Number 3. Ares. Inspired by a Greek god of the same name, Ares was initially introduced as an antagonist to Thor. However, in 2006, Ares became more of an anti-hero, which inevitably led to him joining forces with the Avengers. Thanks to his Olympian physiology, Ares possesses superhuman strength, speed, stamina, durability, and agility, and is a true immortal, meaning that he can't die by any conventional means. Not only that, Ares has the ability to manipulate war, strife, combat, and all forms of conflict, including mental, physical, spiritual, and conceptual ones, regardless of the area and numbers involved, meaning he can control how they progress. Immediately following the superhero civil war over its legislation, Iron Man and Ms. Marvel traveled to Ares' construction site to recruit him for their new Avengers team. Agreeing that the heroes had ruined his civilian cover, Ares eventually agreed to join the team after Iron Man threatened to deport him to Olympus if he didn't register with the US government and promised a salary similar to that of his construction job. He played a pivotal role in Ultron's defeat and was also largely responsible for bringing down Norman Osborn's Stark Avengers. That victory was sadly bittersweet though, because it led to his death as he was just straight up ripped completely in half. Don't worry though, like I said, he is a god, so he was resurrected not too long after. Check out his entire story for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in the Golden Age in 1942's Comedy Comics Number 10. Number 2. Gilgamesh. Often referred to as the Forgotten One, Gilgamesh's heroic exploits have become so legendary over the millennia that he's often referred to as heroes of myth like Hercules and of course Gilgamesh, which kind of explains his name and why he goes by Gilgamesh. He is one of, if not the strongest member of the hidden group of superpowered beings known as the Eternals, an ancient race of genetically altered humans created by the Celestials. Alongside his teammates, he helps shield humanity from the vicious deviants, though Gilgamesh seems to have a very soft spot for protecting the people of Earth. He joined the Avengers in a time where their membership was at an all-time low, and although his time with them was pretty short, he was an absolutely vital member of the team. While all Eternals were born with an inherent set of superhuman abilities including super strength, Gilgamesh's strength far exceeds that of any of his counterparts, making him one of the most physically powerful characters in all of Marvel, with strength comparable to that of Hercules, Thor, and any other godlike being. As a result of countless millennia of training, Gilgamesh is also an extremely skilled hand-to-hand combatant, which coupled with his imperviousness to damage makes him one of Marvel's most dangerous characters. As is the case with most Eternals, Gilgamesh can also emit deadly beams of light, heat, and physical force from his hands and eyes, and can manipulate matter to a limited degree. Give his story a read for yourself, starting with 1977's Eternals, Number 13. Number 1. Blue Marvel. Adam Brashear, aka Blue Marvel, was known as a child prodigy from an early age and has PhDs in electrical engineering and theoretical physics. After serving his time in the Korean War, Adam joined and led a project attempting to harness antimatter by creating a negative reactor, but unfortunately there was an unexpected explosion and both he and his partner Connor Sims were exposed to the radiation. Now Sims wasn't too lucky and his whole body just disassembled, but Adam was able to become a stable antimatter reactor and develop some pretty sweet powers. As Blue Marvel, he possesses super strength that rivals both the Hulk and Thor, can manipulate antimatter into energy blast, can fly, is pretty much invulnerable, and is also pretty much immortal as he ages much slower than the normal human, making him a serious force to be reckoned with. As a part of the mighty Avengers, both the 1970s and the one led by Luke Cage and the Ultimates, we have seen Blue Marvel go up against the likes of the Deathwalkers, King Hyperion, and one time he even flew straight through Shumagorath's head because why not, right? Not only that, he has been seen able to withstand the blast of a hydrogen bomb and can even go toe-to-toe with Captain Marvel and come out relatively unscathed. So yeah, he deserves the top spot today. Check him out for yourself, starting with 2009's Adam, Legend of the Blue Marvel, Number 1.
Starting us off in at number 10, War Machine. War Machine, aka James Rhodes, was one of the initial members of the Secret Avengers, but eventually was assigned as the government's own Iron Man due to a contract between Tony Stark's Stark Resilient Company and the Pentagon. He served as a lieutenant at the time. But let's jump back for a sec. James Rhodes first appeared in Iron Man issue 118 in 1979, but wouldn't suit up until a handful of years later in 1983 in Iron Man issue 170 when he donned the Iron Man mantle. He would eventually become War Machine in 1992 in Iron Man issue 282 after it was revealed that Tony Stark wasn't dead after all, and that he wanted Rhodey to have the variable threat response battlesuit, since it always kinda belonged to his pal anyway. His War Machine suit gives him the abilities similar to Stark's in his Iron Man suit, including superhuman strength, durability, supersonic flight, and the use of an energy repulsor and a variety of offensive and defensive weaponry at his disposal. Rhodes would rejoin the team as part of one of the Marvel Now recruits, but as Iron Patriot, leaving the team once again in Secret Avengers Volume 1, Issue 16. Moving on to number 9, the Human Torch. We're talking Jim Hammond here. The Human Torch, the android version of the character, is one of a handful of characters on this list that aren't one of the original Secret Avengers team members from the 2010 iteration. Hammond would become known as one of the Shattered Heroes recruits, who joined the team during Secret Avengers issue 22 in 2012. But Hammond's history goes way further back than that. A Golden Age hero, he was one of Timely Comics' signature characters, Timely being Marvel's predecessor. While the Johnny Storm version of the Human Torch would adapt Hammond's abilities, their origins couldn't be any more different. Hammond is an android created by Professor Phineas T. Horton. At his grand unveiling, the android burst into flames when exposed to oxygen, and was perceived to be a threat to the public. He was sealed in concrete as a safety measure, but the sentient robot broke free thanks to a crack that let oxygen seep through. He can manipulate fire, is resistant to it, can fly, and can survive without oxygen for long periods of time. Hammond would eventually depart from the team during Secret Avengers issue 37. Moving on to number 8, Moon Knight. Mark Spector was one of the original 9 teammates that made up the first iteration of the Secret Avengers. He's also one of their most intriguing members, being an expert detective often compared to Batman from DC Comics. Mark Spector was initially a boxer and US Marine, and is an expert in a variety of different forms of hand-to-hand combat including Judo, Kung Fu, and Muay Thai. He gained his superhuman powers from the Egyptian moon god Khonshu, giving him superhuman strength, endurance, and reflexes, all based on the phases of the moon. But those powers would be removed from the character in 2007 during his solo Midnight Sun arc, with Spector admitting that he lost them due to disobedience. Spector also has multiple personalities and is notoriously psychologically unstable. Spector would leave the Secret Avengers in issue 21. Up next, looking at the team leader himself, in at 7, Captain Steve Rogers. Steve Rogers is yet another one of Timely's staple trifecta, having been created in 1941 by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. Designed as a wartime patriotic super soldier, often fighting against the Axis powers of World War II, the character would fall into obscurity in 1950, showing up a few times and then later being revived in 1964, where he was thawed out of ice and became one of the Avengers. He has been on many a team in the past, most famously, obviously the Avengers, but has dabbled in other iterations, including the Secret Avengers. His strength comes from the super soldier serum, giving him peak human strength, speed, durability, agility, reflexes, senses, and an accelerated healing factor. In addition to that, he is a master tactician, strategist, and field commander, and definitely knows his way around hand-to-hand combat. Steve would leave the team in Secret Avengers issue 22, but eventually return to his position as the leader of the Avengers, resuming his role as Captain America. And fun fact, the costume that Cap wears in the MCU film Captain America the Winter Soldier was inspired by the super soldier costume that he wore in the first volume of Secret Avengers. Moving on to 6, Captain Britain. Here we have a member from the Shattered Heroes recruits. Captain Britain, aka Brian Braddock, found himself joining up in issue 22 of the first volume of Secret Avengers. Captain Britain first appeared in 1976's Captain Britain issue 1, a comic exclusively published in the UK by Marvel. He has superhuman strength, speed, endurance, agility, durability, reflexes, and senses. He can create force fields, energy beams, and he can even fly. His powers were initially thanks to a mystical amulet called the Amulet of Right, which Braddock would rub to transform into his superhero persona, but that would later change with his powers being tied to his emotions instead. Up next at 5, Agent Venom, aka Flash Thompson. Flash Thompson is yet another Shattered Heroes recruit. He is a character who has been around for quite some time, first appearing in Amazing Fantasy issue 15 in 1962 during Spider-Man's debut, as a school peer bully of Peter Parker's. He would eventually mature, becoming a close friend of Peter's, learning his secret identity, and eventually joining the US Army after he graduated college. He ended up losing both of his legs in the Iraq War, and turned to alcoholism to deal with his trauma. But eventually the military decided to enlist him again for other means. He would become Agent Venom, bonding with the Venom symbiote, allowing him to use his legs again, all while controlling Venom Venom thanks to a cocktail of drugs. As Agent Venom, he can not only walk again, but he has superhuman strength, agility, reflexes, endurance, and can produce organic webbing. He has an immunity to spider sense, can shapeshift and camouflage to an extent, and can cling to almost any surface, creating his own armor and forming his own limbs. Thompson also left the Secret Avengers in issue 37. Up next at 4, Nova. Nova, the Richard Rider iteration, was a part of the original team of Secret Avengers, leaving during the events of issue 5 of the very first volume. Richard was technically first created by Marv Wolfman in his fanzine Super Adventures in 1966. He wouldn't become a part of the Marvel Universe until 1976 in a story called The Man Called Nova, issue 1. He was meant to be an homage to Spider-Man, but a more cosmic version. So what can Nova do? Well, he is capable of flight, he has superhuman strength, speed, and durability, and he can exert influence over gravitational forces, and even open up wormholes. He would also come into possession of the Xandarnian World Mind, which allowed him near infinite control over the Nova Force, which gave him the ability to use energy projection and absorption. So in all, not too shabby. Unfortunately, Richard Rider would eventually die during the events of the Thanos Imperative. In our number 3 spot, Beast. Beast, aka Hank McCoy, was part of the first iteration of Secret Avengers that began in 2010. He is by far one of the most physically intimidating team members thanks to his mutation. But Beast is definitely not just brawn. His character is known for his superior genius level intellect, being a brilliant, well-educated individual with a witty sense of humor and a reliable authority on biochemistry and genetics. His mutation gives him an animal-esque physiology, enhancing his physical attributes along with giving him sharp claws and teeth. He also employs a unique acrobatic fighting style when in battle. He can jump great distances, and his feet are sensitive enough to detect electronic signals, the likes of listening devices or bombs. Although Hank would depart from the Secret Avengers in issue 37, much like some of his other teammates. Up next, number 2, Valkyrie. Another OG member at this number. If we were looking at just the original team members of the Secret Avengers, Valkyrie, aka Brunhild, would have topped our list altogether. And as Guardian hero, she initially was selected by Odin to lead his personal unit of shield maidens, and became known for her prowess in battle. Her powers are based off of her Asgardian physiology. Her body is several times denser than humans, and while she is an immortal, she ages at a much slower rate than we do. Plus, she's immune to earthly diseases. She has enhanced strength and stamina, and is one of the most skilled warriors of the 9 realms, having extensive training in sword fighting, unarmed combat, and horseback riding, with her natural fighting abilities amongst the best of all Asgardians. She has an enchanted sword called Dragon Fang that was carved from a tooth of an extra-dimensional dragon. She can also perceive the approach of death thanks to something called a death glow, an aura of sorts that surrounds a person's body that reveals to her their death is imminent. Valkyrie would eventually depart from the Secret Avengers, also in issue 37 along with Beast. And finally, last but not least, in at 1, the Hulk. The Hulk became a member of the Secret Avengers following the Avengers vs. X-Men storyline in the Marvel Comics, along with the fight against the Descendants. S.H.I.E.L.D. took control of the Secret Avengers operations, which involved adding new recruits to the team like Mockingbird, Taskmaster, and Hulk himself. They're considered to be the Marvel Now recruits. Anywho, it's pretty obvious why Hulk tops this list. The angrier the Hulk gets, the stronger he gets, and the more invulnerable he is. His anger empowerment ability makes him one of the most powerful and straight up strongest individuals in the Marvel Universe in the comics, and it's rare we encounter an individual capable of withstanding his attacks and outmatching his endurance and stamina. He can even survive nuclear attacks and is proven to outlast most other Earth-based heroes, as seen in a handful of alternate timeline stories in the multiverse. And unlike the rest, the Hulk didn't officially depart the Secret Avengers team, but the last time he was present in the comics as one of their members was in volume 2 of the series in issue 15. Starting us off in at number 10, Super Soldier. We're starting off our list with a number that would be an awesome addition to the Avengers roster, but would feasibly never manage to even be considered for the team in the regular 616 universe. That's because he's an amalgamation of Steve Rogers and Superman. This is Super Soldier, a product of the combined DC Marvel amalgam universe in which various characters from each publisher were merged together to create new individuals. It's a neat concept, and it gave us a lot of interesting characters. Naturally, it makes sense that Captain America and Superman would make a great match for each other, with the hero gaining his abilities thanks to the Super Soldier formula, which was created thanks to cellular samples from an alien corpse. Little less of an inspiring superhero origin story, isn't it? He can do everything that Cap and Supes can do, so needless to say, that's impressive. But damned if DC would ever let him join a 616 Avengers team. Up next, number 9, Hawkeye 2099. A 2099 version of Hawkeye appeared in Secret Wars, and he's really dope. So 2099 is a Marvel Comics imprint that initially began being published in 1992 as one possible future in the Marvel Universe. It's meant to take place 100 years in the future, and was initially titled Marvel 2093, which clearly was a little less catchy. Anyway, this Hawkeye shows up in Secret Wars 2019 issue 1 from 2015 as part of Alchemex's Avengers team. Named Max, last name never revealed, he differs from the traditional iterations of Hawkeye by having his DNA mixed with a hawk's, which gave him real claws and real wings. In our number 8 spot we have Natasha Stark. Here we have an alternate version of Iron Man hailing from Earth 3490, and it's a unique one. This Iron Man is actually Iron Woman, born Natasha Stark rather than Tony. She's exactly like Tony in the sense of having the same abilities as the 616 Stark and an almost identical suit of armor, except it's referred to as her Iron Woman armor, of course. Here's where things get really interesting though. Because this alternate version of Stark is a woman, Civil War never happened. Instead, Natasha gets involved with Captain America Steve Rogers, the two marry, and the Civil War event never occurs on Earth 3490. Apparently, they were a deterrent to each other's more aggressive behavior. Natasha first appeared in Dark Reign Fantastic Four issue 2 in 2009 when Reed Richards was in search of alternate realities in which Civil War had ended differently. Moving on to our number 7 spot, we have AntMan Wolverine. Yes, this exists. Secret Wars gave us a slew of alternates of various characters, and this includes a version of Ant-Man who is Wolverine, or rather, a version of Wolverine who operates under the Ant-Man mantle. First appearing in Secret Wars Battle World issue 3, this little Logan has the same powers as those who have operated under the Ant-Man mantle. And tiny claws to boot! How fun. This Ant-Man Wolverine was one of many alternate versions of Wolverine who were brought together in an attempt to fight a pacifist version of Wolverine, aka Monk, by Mojo. Now these other Wolverines involve another alias of Hank Pym's, Giant Man, who, as you guessed it, was a Wolverine who could also grow in size. There was also a cat Wolverine and a dog Wolverine, but kinda less credible than the rest of the other alternate Wolverines, just saying. And at number 6, Janet Van Dyne of Earth 1610. This version of the Wasp is from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. While her fate is a pretty brutal one, and her relationship with Hank Pym is, textbook domestic abuse, she possesses something that Van Dyne of 616 does not, the ability to actually transform into a wasp-human hybrid. Born a mutant, her mutation gave her insect-like traits that also expanded to her behavior. She could lay eggs and eat insects, which yes is kind of gross, but the benefits at least outweigh the downsides. When she would reduce in size via the force of her willpower, she would grow a pair of insect-like wings from her back. She retained her normal strength when reducing in size and could control the exact proportions of that size, although her body contained a natural neurological reflex that prevented her from shrinking below a specific size, so can't get too small. And she also has an ability called bioelectrical blasts, in which she produces energy that she calls her wasp stings. She could use these blasts when at full size, which was essentially the equivalent of being struck by a lightning bolt. Moving on to number 5, Iron Maniac from Earth 5012. Okay, sure, we are looking at an Iron Man here who is technically a little off his rocker. Anthony Stark of Earth 5012, who calls himself Iron Maniac due to him believing that he is, I quote, the sole survivor of a sane world living in a backwards insane world, is from an alternate timeline where most Avengers members had been slain by the alien Titanus. During this period, Reed Richards became power hungry and turned his back on the remaining heroes, and Stark ended up being scarred by an attack from the Human Torch. Essentially, he turns into a Victor Von Doom-esque character, setting up his base in Latveria in order to take over the world and save it from Richards. Compared to the original Tony, his body contains additional cybernetic enhancements, and he has developed a technology called power dampeners, which, in his timeline, he uses to counteract the Fantastic Four's powers. Nifty. Moving on to number 4, Weapon Hex. Weapon Hex is the product of the Infinity Wars storyline in which multiple characters were merged together. More on that later. Weapon Hex is an amalgamation of Scarlet Witch and X-23, aka Laura Kinney, Wolverine's cloned daughter of sorts. Her origin story is an amalgamation of both characters' origins, with the result being a character who has the reality warping abilities of Wanda Maximoff and the adamantium skeleton and claws of Laura Kinney. Essentially, she is Scarlet Witch with a defensive and melee upgrade, mixed with a dose of X-23's inherent trauma from being the literal creation of an experiment. Regardless though, she's pretty kick-ass. And at number 3, Storm Thor, from Earth 904. that rhymes. This alternate version of Thor is one in which Storm becomes the goddess of thunder. This occurred in an issue of Marvel's hypothetical series What If, in Volume 2, Issue 12 from 1990, within a story titled What If the X-Men Had Stayed in Asgard. The story follows an instance in which the X-Men and New Mutants found themselves in Asgard, if the title didn't give that away already, with some of the mutants returning to Earth and others staying put. This led to a new age of X-Men on our home planet and a bunch of different X-Men members, the likes of Rogue, Nightcrawler, Mirage, Sunspot, and Cypher adopting an Asgardian way of life. Storm ended up becoming the new god of thunder due to Thor being trapped in the form of a Midgard frog. When Hela and Karnilla conspired to steal Storm's soul, Storm bested them, and Thor was released because of it. Thor renounced the throne, opting to go live on Earth instead, and gave it to Storm, who became the Queen of Asgard, since Odin had died. She also had her own hammer to wield called the Stormbringer. And hey, having a kick-ass version of Storm replace Thor in the Avengers? I mean, count us in, that's pretty cool. Moving on to number 2, Maestro Hulk. Hailing from the dystopian future of Earth 9200, Maestro Hulk is an alternate version of the Hulk who is a horrible tyrant. He first appeared in the 1992 story The Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect issue 1. Now, despite him being literally insane and a complete obsessive sadist, he is a version of the Hulk who is a more experienced and stronger version than the regular 616 Hulk. The 6161 was ultimately able to best Maestro, and thus implying that Maestro's demise was actually the catalyst event that created the Hulk in the first place. There's a whole time displacement thing that happened. That being said, let's play a game of hypotheticals here, as if we weren't already in this list. If Maestro was actually a good guy instead, he would be a massive asset to the Avengers team. He's got all the benefits of being the Hulk, the super strength, speed, stamina, durability, the regenerative healing factor, capable of absorbing and resisting radiation, resistance to mind control, all that fun stuff, while maintaining his genius level intellect in this form. And he's immortal. He's like an upgraded, although still kind of mad version of the Hulk, and hey, that's pretty cool. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Soldier Supreme. Soldier Supreme is one of the more recently created alternates on our list. He is an amalgamation of Captain America and Doctor Strange, a product of that Infinity Wars storyline. Now that storyline involves Gamora using the Infinity Gems to fold reality in half and create something called Warp World. This merged many characters into one, with Steve Rogers and Stephen Strange becoming Steven Rogers. Their origin stories were merged, their powers were merged, and so were their aesthetics. This results in a version of Captain America who can do all of the things that Doctor Strange can do. In other words, Cap got a serious upgrade. Imagine having a Captain America who is basically a Sorcerer Supreme, or I guess Soldier Supreme, on the Avengers. Yeah, that's pretty cool.